So recently, I have been thinking a lot about social media. And if you've been watching my live streams or listening to my videos, you know that I have quite the take on social media, that I believe it is something new that we are all interacting with and has the potential to be unhealthy and destructive. And perhaps some of that is happening on a rather large scale at the moment, which is not good for our getting along, our togetherness, because there's a lot of division and polarization going around at the moment. Well, on Netflix, did I just say Netflix? Oh, jeez. On Netflix comes out this documentary called The Social Dilemma. And boy, oh boy, when I started watching that, I was thinking, this is like capturing everything that I've been learning about in regards of social media for a while now. It's kind of capturing it all and putting the picture together, but it's told through the lens of people that have made this stuff, right? It's people that have left the industry to now come and talk about it a little bit and say, look, we've created something here that is potentially dangerous. And now there's people in chat saying that they've seen it too. Awesome. I highly recommend watching it for everyone. Okay? Anyone here, go watch it. If you watch the first 20, 30 minutes and you're thinking, this ain't for me, fair enough, you gave it a shot. But I can't help but feel that a lot of people would benefit from absorbing the information available. It seems to be, for me, a culmination of many things I've learned from different resources and sources, just kind of all in one place, and a great way of narrating the different aspects of it and bringing it to a conclusion as well. It was really good. And there were some interesting perspectives on there as well. They had a few people that I didn't entirely agree with their way of framing it, but it's always good to see other people's perspectives on stuff. So anyway, this morning, I'm listening to the latest Devin Townsend podcast, and boy, oh boy, has it been a treat to hear through his records and how he made them from his perspective. And he also is using the podcast pretty much as like his own therapy session, whether he realizes it or not, and just sort of openly talking through how he's dealing with life day to day and what he's been going through the pandemic. And I really like that aspect of the podcast itself. I love hearing about the records. And anyway, the first 45 minutes is him talking about social media. And he also mentions that he watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix. And so it became extremely interesting to hear about it from his perspective, and it's really just got the gears turning over in my head about social media again. I occasionally talk about trying to like detox from it or consume it less, and I've decided I'm no longer going to keep my Twitter account open on my web browser, which I usually do. There is one good reason I have for it, and I'm going to find a workaround for this, but it's also a part of my work. I kind of need to monitor it to find out when there's a snapshot. So or Minecraft news in general. So I need to find a solution to that. But I moved it to a tab on my homepage called End of Day. So end of day just means do this once a day, right? That's my mental note. And I've been listening to a book called Atomic Habits. I listened to a podcast about it a long time ago, and I decided to get the book and try and reinforce some of these ideas and principles about forming habits into my day. And with that, it just kind of reminded me, like, he's talking a lot about the availability of behavior in this book. Like, if you put something in front of yourself constantly, like a cookie in the kitchen, you're more likely to eat a cookie in the kitchen. If there isn't one there, you're probably not all of a sudden going to be going, oh, I want a cookie. Like, these things are triggers, they are cues. And so if I remove that thing, my Twitter feed, from being there on my browser every time I open it up, I'm not going to interact with it as much. And I've wanted to do this because I noticed I just had this kind of idle time, which is something Devin talked about a little bit in his podcast as well, where you just seem to all of a sudden like go to social media and start looking, and then time passes by and you're not really doing anything. It's like unproductive. And so I'm looking for ways to minimize that kind of behavior. And so by moving it to this end of day tab, every time I look at it, even if I do open it up in the day, which I did a couple of times purely to check for Minecraft news, it allowed me to like just assess my behavior in the moment. Like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I open it up, well, there's a reason I'm going here, and let's stick to that reason. Let's not read my Twitter feed until the end of the day. And I really like having that element of control on it. Yeah, it's a big experiment to introduce to us humans that have evolved over an extended period of time without this access to people's opinions and, breaking news all the time and stuff that feels very immediate and applications that are constantly sending us little updates and trying to lure us in to spend time on their platform. Like, the objective is in this sort of digital environment to get our engagement, and we are the subject of that. So it's our evolution that's kind of being used against us to pull us in and to keep us on these platforms. And that seems to exacerbate some of the worst qualities, like our propensity to focus on negativity. And so it's, if anyone out there is like having anxiety and any of these like health issues, and you believe it could be related to social media, well, pay attention to that and look into it and maybe give yourself a break, because it seems to be unhealthy for a lot of us. And for me, I feel like I've got a grip on it, but I realize there are times when people tweet me nasty stuff and I just fixate on it for ages. And I'm not one to like get into a little bit of, let's say, Twitter beef or, like argue with someone. I try and avoid that kind of arguing across the internet because you tend to talk past each other. But man, I can fixate on it as well. And Devin was talking about this. He was saying, like I can fixate on the negative stuff and, treat it like it's all too important. You can also fixate, or not fixate on positive stuff, but you can take the positive stuff too much to heart. Like, essentially, this stream of what other people are thinking can get in the way of you, doing what you're trying to do. And if I think about my, like, creative endeavors, I think I do get a lot of really helpful positivity from other people who share their creativity as well. But when it comes to negativity, I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing this. I don't feel like I'm doing anything that should ring any alarm bells. And so when I come across this negativity out there on the internet, I don't want to get fixated on it. And I do. I get caught up in it. And so I've decided I really want to steer social media out of my life as much as I can. And that probably means reading less comments. However, here with a chat full of comments, this is a good environment. We have a lot of good conversations here. Macy Moo says, Twitter always gets me into political arguments. Yeah, Macy, I see that trap on Twitter, right? So I give you a suggestion. It's up to you if you want to do it or not. But like, let's say you set yourself a rule. Maybe you're not going to use Twitter less, but no political arguments. And rather than focusing on, person out there thinks this crazy thing, which is what, often political arguments tend to get exacerbated to, as if like, people are crazy out there with different opinions, usually because we're exposed to different news sources. But like, if you just make it like a rule that you're not going to get into those arguments anymore, at the end of that period where you're like, right, I've done this for like a couple of weeks now, if you assess how you feel, I think you might find that like general stress and anxiety or fixation on these things might be a little less. Like, arguing with people over Twitter has, in my experience, never been productive, and often leaves you with those lingering thoughts of like, what if this person says that and I'll say this and they're an idiot, and like, your brain's not wired for it properly. I don't think your brain's wired for it properly. In fact, it's the apps that are wired to take advantage of our brain, it would seem, which is something that the Netflix documentary shows really well through this perspective of like, what if the algorithm were humans and they're like standing around making decisions, and you can see how like geared these algorithms are to figuring us out and keeping us on these platforms. Really great documentary. I'm going to say it again. It was great. So moving forward, like as a society, I really think there needs to be a conversation around this. There have been conversations. I've been listening to them, on podcasts, and I've been telling all of y'all about it. It's really nice to see something big like that. And I think it's important for all of us to pay attention to it and to pass it on to other people and bring more people into this conversation, because social media is potentially tearing apart some of our social norms and the fabric of society, as they say, I can't help but feel that in the long run, we're going to get through this like tricky time, but it ain't going to be done without hard work. Discussions need to be had And I think probably laws and legislation are going to come about to regulate these big data and tech industries because they're having a corrosive effect, it would appear, on our society. Let's turn it over to chat now. Let's turn it over to chat. It's heckin' toxic to be addicted to news anyway, says I'm here for Jack. Addicted to news. I think you're capable of taking in news in a healthy way, but I think the current news climate and the average person, we're probably not equipped with those sorts of skills, right? Like, I feel like I'm definitely not. If I were to, let's say, steer what I do here online into some more sort of like news-oriented ambition, I'd have to have a real clear strategy on how I read news every day, because a lot of it is geared towards outrage. It is geared towards, pushing our buttons to get that engagement. We are, attracted to negativity because of our evolution. Threats in the wild. Do you need to hold on to information like, is that tiger over there a threat to me and it's going to kill me, or do the rose bushes look nice? What information is more valuable for you in terms of how we've evolved? It's the threats and the dangers, and so that's why we are so drawn to this stuff. And I think you'd have to have a really healthy approach to working in news media and dealing with that stuff constantly every day. We got AJ Main 12 here for 19 months. Arbites for free. Shekby 29 for 2 months, saying social media functions around being in an echo chamber. Yeah, the way I would describe the echo chamber is to not think that there is this echo chamber out there full of people who've got the wrong idea about stuff. And, you might think of it of like you see some political view that is of the other side, if we're going to have sides, right, on Twitter, and you're like, oh, you're just in your echo chamber. What you got to realize is that we're all in echo chambers. It's the way the stuff is designed. You engage with this type of content, it shows you some more. And too often, a negative effect of the echo chamber is that when we interact with other people online, we're also not really seeing the information that they're exposed to. So you can have two people going back and forth about an opinions around a certain topic, yet we don't actually understand all this information that the other person has seen. I've had a few people challenge me over the things that I talk about in these videos, and they say stuff like, you need to educate yourself and learn about this and learn about that. And I'm thinking, well, you don't actually have like a map of all the things that I've taken in to reach this conclusion or whatever it is I've expressed in these videos. And sometimes they're about things that I'd consider myself to know a bit about, or have invested a fair amount of time in learning or just being interested in, right? So there is that as well. The term I like for that is information siloing. Like, we all have these silos of information that we've learned about the world, but we can't see what's in each other's silos, which is why I think in discussion it's really important to fully explain through ideas and listen to one another. Even if you think that person's got the wrong idea, it's important to learn from one another, right? Just learning each other's perspectives.